It is officially UFC 323 Fight Week, the very last card of the year and possibly the very last UFC pay-per-view ever to exist with this model, because we are approaching a brand new era in the UFC, a Paramount deal, historic, and potentially a lot of growth for the UFC. So this is the very last card. And the biggest thing you need to know about this card, right, UFC 323, is that it may not have the most flashiest star power on the card. It might not be the most flashy card with big names, superstar, Taira, Pereira, none of that. But overall, it is still a very quality card because the collection of fights on this card are all extremely fun and entertaining banger matchups. Of course, you have the two title fights headlining with Merab and Pantoja, both who have been extremely dominant champions at their divisions and could already be in conversations as the GOATs of their divisions, right? You're looking at Merab, who's pretty much the GOAT of bantamweight, let's be real. And then Pantoja, who's still kind of could be argued to be between him and Demetrius Johnson, but is really right there as a flyweight GOAT. So this is a lighter weight class themed card. Under the card, you also have two big ranked fights in both divisions as well. You have a ranked flyweight fight that could be the next guy up in Brandon Moreno versus Tatsuro Taira. And then you have Henry Cejudo versus Payton Talbott. And like I said, there's a bunch of sick, entertaining prelims throughout this card as well. So we are going to get into this final pay-per-view of the year in Las Vegas, where the UFC always ends off. And we're going to start going through the early prelims. Marion Santos versus Mohamed Naimov. Both on, I think, multi-win win streaks right now. Mohamed Naimov, where's this guy from again? You know, from Tajikistan, and then Marion Santos is from Brazil. As good as Mohamed Naimov has been, I think he's finally met his match in the young, up-and-coming prospect. I think Marion Santos is still a prospect in Marion Santos. And this is definitely Marion Santos' toughest fight yet of his career. 3 fights in the UFC, 3 wins. Ofali's a pretty good win. Sadiq Youssef is a pretty good win. And he's taken on Mohamed Naimov. And Naimov has been around for quite a while. He's riding off a 2-win win streak versus Ofali himself and Bogdan, who just got chinned by Luke Riley. He lost to Jungle Boy Felipe Lima, and every other fight he has won. So he has had an impressive start in his UFC campaign, but I think he's once again met his match in a young, up-and-coming prospect, Brazilian Marion Santos. So I'm going with Marion Santos versus Mohamed Naimov. Mansour Abdul Malik versus Antonio Tricoli. Mansour Abdul Malik has been very good so far in the UFC, 8-0. Had a very like uphill battle fight versus Ludovic Klein, but ended up coming out of that fight with the win. And then more decisively beat Cody Brundage in a decision. But eventually he was fighting a very uphill battle with Klein. Klein was giving him a run for his money in the first half of the fight, but he really impressed people because of how Abdul Malik came back into that fight. He dug deep and ended up getting the finish. So I don't know much about this Antonio Tricoli, but for the sake of it, I'm going to pick up Mansour Abdul Malik. Ibo Aslan took the loss. He's been I think he's going to go back to his winning ways with this fight. You know, he's a quick finisher, quick hands, usually comes very aggressive out the gate. Okay, so I'm being pretty straightforward. I mean, this fight could go either way. Both are very good. And then Mansour Abdul Malik, Ibo Aslan. Now, this is where it starts getting interesting. Who saw this coming? Actually, maybe you could have saw it coming, but Jalin Turner, the Tarantula, is making a return from retirement versus Edson Barbosa, a striker's banger. Jalin Turner, you know, is 14-9. The record doesn't display as much how, because Jalin Turner has been a big deal, big enough to be talked about when he's coming back from retirement. He's had he's had a lot of, good, consistent, ranked fights. He, of course, put on a lot of damage on Bobby Green, King Green, whatever you want to call him. And, yeah, he violently finished him. He almost beat Moicano. He had Moicano hurt, but decided not to finish him on the ground. Fumbled that fight, ended up losing, and then lost again in his last fight versus Bahamondes, where he got submitted in the first round. And that was kind of what sent him off into retirement with the doubts in his head. Can he still do this? Turner, though, for him, this is a great fight for him to come back, but for his sake, he's got to win this. Imagine if Jalin Turner, after all this talk, comes back into the UFC after 2 straight losses in the first round and loses to an old-aged Edson Barbosa. Let's be real, Edson Barbosa is at the very end of his career. He just lost to Drakkar Klose. Edson Barbosa just ain't that guy no more. This is going to be still, I think, not as, it's going to be a narrow fight, but Jalin Turner, by all means, needs to win and should win this fight. He's the younger guy. He has should be hungrier if he's really deciding to come back from retirement, in this fight. So he's really got to win. If he loses this, bro, that's just going to look bad. I got Jalin Turner to bounce back with a great finish, hopefully in the second or third round, hopefully to knock out, chin Edson Barbosa. I think he's going to do it. I think Jalin Turner is going to make a statement comeback coming out of retirement with a knockout on Edson Barbosa. So that's a fun prelim. And then Marvin Vettori, after getting completely outclassed by Brendan Allen, he's taking on Bruno Ferreira. I think they've tried to make this fight multiple times. So yeah, Marvin Vettori, just honestly, interesting fight. Very interesting fight. Could swing either way, but Marvin Vettori sucks. I think Bruno Ferreira is going to take his ranking. I don't like Marvin Vettori that much. But yeah, now we go into the prelims. See, this is what I'm talking about. First of all, great early prelims, Barbosa, Turner. You have 3 fights right here in these prelim slot that are phenomenal fights. If you're a casual, you may not be put on to these fights. But if you know anything really about UFC, you know that all these fights are bangers. Ziam, 17-4, had that crazy knee on Matt Frivola. That crazy finish. He's been really good in his UFC run so far. Very long and hot, 6'1", pretty tall lightweight. He was supposed to fight in France versus, I forgot the name, but he's supposed to have a really good matchup in France, and then he pulled out. Not pulled out, but he had a family emergency or something. So we didn't end up seeing on that card. He comes back to take on 11-1 from Azerbaijan, Nazim Sadykhov, who had one of the most explosive and entertaining fights in his home country of Baku. If people remember that fight, Nazim Sadykhov was getting pieced up by Mata. Whatever his first name is, Mata. But they were having a crazy boxing fight. He was getting pieced up by one point. He was being put on the fence. And then Sadykhov he thought he might be about to get finished. And then boom, responds with his own 1-2 combinations. And there's this crazy combination with 2 strikes and then a head kick. And the reaction was wild. And it was a war. And then came into that second round or whatever. And dude, first of all, it was a bloody, violent masterpiece. And then ends up finishing Mata. Puts him out with, this dude is extremely entertaining. Very satisfying and appealing style to watch with Nazim Sadykhov. So I don't know if I think I want to lean towards Sadykhov to hand Ziam his first loss in a while. If you look at Ziam, who is his strength of competition been so far, he's been on a pretty big win streak. His last win was to Terrence Mckinney. So yeah, KO TKO. His last fight was a finish though. Ziam. But I think I'm going to take Nazim Sadykhov, who's just been a phenomenal fighter to watch. Super fun in this lightweight division. That's a crazy fight. Macy Barber, she pulled out versus Blanchfield. We all know she had to go to the hospital. That was an awful Apex card main event anyways, but taking on Karine Silva, whatever, not much on that. Terrence Mckinney versus Chris Duncan. If you know anything about the UFC, you know that this is a sick fight. Both these guys barely go to decisions. Terrence Mckinney has never gone to a decision. All of his fights have either ended in him on the right side of it or on the wrong side of it. Terrence McKinney is a finisher. A finisher, T-Rex. Submission versus Borshev in round 1. TKO KO versus Hazadik in round 1. The Rebovich fight. Rebovich knocked him out in round 1. Round 1, KO TKO, round 1. Bro, all of his fights have ended in finish. Terrence McKinney has never gone to a decision. Never. He's a pretty sick fighter, if you ask me. I mean, whether he wins or loses, just super entertaining. And then Chris Duncan. Pretty impressive fight over Vucevic. And he's becoming, like, one of my, like, favorite, like, sleeper fighters. Besides, like, losing to Manuel Torres, he's beaten everyone else. And he had one of the craziest fights of this year versus Mateusz Rebecki. Crazy war. If you didn't watch that fight, you need to watch that fight. Him versus Rebecki was an insane, bloody war. Both got so much damage, but Chris Duncan came out of it victorious. So he has pretty much won in all of his fights except for the Manuel Torres fight. So both extremely violent fighters. You would have to be such a, like, it would be crazy. Like, I'm trying to say, it would be crazy if this fight ended in decision. There is no way in hell this fight ends in a decision. Terrence McKinney has never gone to decision, and Chris Duncan's one of the most violent fighters I've ever seen. Well, based off his last fight. So I'm going to lean towards Chris Duncan, though. I really like Chris Duncan, so I'm leaning towards him. And then finally, Grant Dawson. He's not talked about a lot in this lightweight division, but ranked at number 13, taking on Manuel Torres. Manuel Torres has had a pretty good UFC run. As I just mentioned, he was the only guy to beat Chris Duncan, beat Drew Dober, Mata. Pretty good run, Mexican fighter. I'm just going to say I think Grant Dawson's going to hold his own versus Manuel Torres and defend his number 13 ranked spot in the future prelims. Now you move on to the main card. Bogdan Guskov versus Jan Blachowicz. Bogdan Guskov is one of the most intimidating looking light heavyweights in this division. I mean, look at that. This guy looks like Voldemort. He's bald, huge, has crazy back tats that look like a fever dream. And this fight has him written all over it. Not saying he's going to easily, violently finish Jan Blachowicz, but Jan Blachowicz is not the same fighter he used to be. But Jan Blachowicz has taken his last 2 losses versus Olberg and Pereira. He had the draw with Ankalaev, but he beat Rakic, beat Adesanya back in the day when Adesanya tried to move up. Jan Blachowicz has had his ups and downs in his UFC career, but he was a champion at one point. But yeah, Polish power, not so much anymore. Bogdan Guskov has violently finished his last 2 opponents. Finished Krylov in the first round, finished Alicana, finished Span. He looks like an absolute terror. And I think you would have to be super, just a crazy gambler to have to pick Jan Blachowicz in his fight. It's Bogdan Guskov's showcase fight to win. So going to go with Bogdan Guskov. Oh, sorry for clicking that again. Now, very interesting fight to have. A lot of people have mixed feelings about it, but Payton Talbott, I think we could still consider him a prospect, is taking on Henry Cejudo. Henry Cejudo, is one of the few fighters that could call himself a 2-division champion, flyweight and bantamweight. Held 2 belts at one point. Can you really believe that? With all the legends that have held 2 belts, most recently being Islam, Henry Cejudo was one of those few fighters that could say that. And this is his retirement fight. This is officially Henry Cejudo's last fight in the UFC. Well, could be. As we see these days, retirements aren't so simple in the UFC. Fighters love to come back from retirements, like Jalin Turner. But as of right now, I really think that this is, as Henry Cejudo said, this is a retirement fight. And they're giving him Payton Talbott, who is an exciting young striker on the feet. Had some early on flashy KOs in the first round, UFC 303. Then at UFC 311 takes on Ronnie Barcelos, an old veteran who just kept him on the ground. Payton Talbott had no kind of defense, no ways of getting up, completely incapable at that fight. But he bounced back really nicely versus Felipe Lima. I thought Felipe Lima was going to beat Payton Talbott, but Payton Talbott bounced back really well in that fight. Was able to stay up on the ground, keep it on the feet, strike with Felipe Lima, piece him up. Showed a lot more resistance when trying to take into the ground with a Brazilian jiu-jitsu guy like Felipe Lima. So who knows if Henry Cejudo is going to try to wrestle with Payton Talbott? I'm sure he will, if it's looking a little scary on the feet. But Payton Talbott is very much live to send Cejudo to retirement with a knockout. Like, Payton Talbott could chin Cejudo. But I really think Cejudo could also just bring us to a wrestling decision. Just wrestle Payton Talbott through 3 rounds. Keep it boring like that. I mean, his fight with Song Yadong, also that, I forgot. He fought in his last fight, Song Yadong. That fight ended weird because of the eye poke. Cejudo couldn't continue. And yeah, Song Yadong, we didn't have a satisfying conclusion to that fight, but it was pretty like, I think Song Yadong was winning that fight. So Cejudo, yeah, retirement fight. Either Payton Talbott continues to build his name over a legend, I guess you could call Cejudo, who has been a legend and veteran in this game, send him off into his retirement with a flashy finish, or just get the win and you're 11-1. But Cejudo, honestly, I think I'm going to lean with Cejudo. I might feel stupid about this pick because I could see a reality where Talbot chins him, but I'm going to go with Cejudo to get one more win in his UFC career. The featured fight, Brandon Moreno versus Tatsuro Taira. Tatsuro Taira lost to Brandon Royval, but then bounced back with a really good win over... He was supposed to fight someone, but then he ended up fighting that random dude. So honestly, it was a good win, but it wasn't this is a good test for Tatsuro Taira after losing to Brandon Royval. 17-1, Japan fighter. One of the few fighters in this the upper ranks of flyweight that could still be a challenger to Pantoja. And Brandon Moreno has bounced back nicely time and time again. He's gotten 3 cracks, I think, at Pantoja if you look back at his career. First of all, great win versus Albazi, great win versus Ursek. Both decisions, but, in all those 5-round fights, Moreno has been putting on striking master classes. He lost to Royval, lost to Pantoja. Oh, no, it was actually Figueiredo that he had the trilogy with. The 4 fights with. That's how down bad the flyweight division has been. Just the champions constantly getting rematches and stuff. But listen, I think I don't know, Tatsuro Taira definitely has more of the ability to put Brandon Moreno on the ground and try that way. But on the feet, Brandon Moreno, who's really hanging with Brandon Moreno on the striking? I think Tatsuro Taira is going to look to follow more of a Pantoja game plan with Moreno. And yeah, either way, I don't know if this fight really matters at all because which one of these guys is beating Pantoja? Moreno's already got his crack at Pantoja. I don't see Moreno beating Pantoja. And Taira could go up and face Pantoja, but I think Pantoja's just got everyone's number in this division. But I'm going to lean towards Tatsuro Taira. It's close, but people love the babyface assassin, but I'm going with Tatsuro Taira versus Brandon Moreno. And then finally, you get into the co-main event. Alexander Pantoja versus Joshua Van. Joshua Van gets his crack at this. He really has been the biggest savage, I think, in the UFC at all. He's 23 years old. And he stepped in there on short notice versus Brandon Royval when Kopp pulled out and put on one of the most entertaining fights of the year. Extremely entertaining and fast-paced striking fight versus Brandon Royval. And I think most people would agree that Brandon Royval was winning the majority of that fight. He was winning the majority of the rounds. Just a little bit here. It was very razor close, but he was a little bit had more strikes than Joshua Van. But Joshua Van was showing off amazing combinations. Quick boxing combinations to the body, to the head. Was sticking with it with Brandon Royval. You don't see many finishes in the UFC, but Van had a finish over Bruno Silva at 316, fought again versus Royval. Just has had many fights in the last a year and a half versus Durden, Tatsuya. Just a savage, a certified legend overnight because of how he finished that fight versus Brandon Royval. Had the crazy knockdown in that final minute. It was like a Max Holloway moment when they were just both fully sending it, standing and banging. So Joshua Van earned his title shot like that, even faced off with Pantoja. But this is a huge, huge jump up for Van right after coming off that win. He is the number one contender technically. And even Royval was such a huge jump up from his last fight. From Bruno Silva to Royval, you almost never see the guy actually really deliver on jumping that fast. But Van did it. And now he's getting the champion in Pantoja, the cannibal. But as we've seen from Pantoja time and time again, no one has had an answer for him. He's on, his 4th or 5th title defense at this point. Just an absolute dominant animal. I shouldn't call him an animal, actually. I meant that in a good way, not in like a degrading way. But Pantoja, as I said, he's pretty much the flyweight GOAT, or right up there with Demetrius Johnson. There's nobody else in that area. You got to say Mighty Mouse and then Pantoja, but with a win over Van, I definitely think Pantoja, then it really is a strong case. Just submitted in his last 2 fights. I mean, Asakura has been aging horribly as a fighter in the UFC, so that doesn't really stand the test of time. But Figueiredo, Royval twice, Kai Car-France in his last fight submission, Steve Erceg, Brandon Moreno. Pantoja's fought everyone, the who's who's of this division. There's really not that much left. Like I said, it could be Taira next. His teammate Kyoji Horiguchi just had a statement win versus Tagir. Maybe at this point you could have Kyoji do that. Or the UFC could actually sign Mohamed Mokaev, which has now been a real possibility because Hunter Campbell has apparently been talking to Mokaev again. And Mokaev may be more inclined now to chill a little bit and behave in order to get back in the good graces of the UFC. Because if Pantoja defends again versus Van, I think you have no other choice but to bring Mokaev back. Mokaev might be the only flyweight on this planet that can give us the most entertaining Pantoja fight. I just think Joshua Van's out of his depth here. I'm seeing people pick Joshua Van, but what's stopping Pantoja from just doing the same thing he's done to France and to Kaisakura with Joshua Van? He's going to eat him alive in there. He's going to put him on the ground and keep him there and submit him. Pantoja, it might take 2 or 3 rounds, but Joshua Van always has that puncher's chance. But like I said, Pantoja is too hungry. The guy still fights like he doesn't have enough to eat on his plate. You know, he's coming from those Brazilian roots where he's just too hungry for it. Like, he's not looking to play around with Joshua Van on the feet. That's what I said when I originally reacted to this fight. He's not looking to play around with Van on the feet. He's not trying to get fancy with it. He's not trying to be like Merab, who's trying to do these side quests of finishing Sanhagen. Pantoja sticks to the basics. He sticks to his clear-cut plan to just continue to be the monster and destroy worlds that he is at this division. And he's just going to, he's going to finish Joshua Van. That's, as much as I love the hype on Joshua Van, it's just another Pantoja quick submission fight. And then we're really going to have a lot of questions on who could challenge Pantoja at this division. Again, it might have to just be Mokaev because he has no interest in fighting Merab. And that brings me to the main event. Again, the theme of this card is if both of these guys, which I believe both of them will defend, they both need to fight each other. It's the only way, to have an entertaining fight with these 2 champions. They're just going to continue to title defense after title defense until they both retire from the sport as GOATs. And that brings me to Merab, who is stepping in for the 4th title defense of the year. And the bantamweight GOAT, Merab is. He's faced everyone in this division who's a real player, all the top-ranked guys, that now he's running through the rematches. He's literally just running laps with the rematches now. Petr Yan was probably the number 1 rematch he needed to have. Well, actually, Sean O'Malley got that done. Honestly, at the end of the day, he's pretty much gotten to fight everyone who we need to see him versus. So, Sanhagen, O'Malley, Nurmagomedov, O'Malley the first time, Cejudo, Petr Yan the first time was the decision. Shot I don't even know the exact amount, but shot all those takedowns versus Petr Yan in the first fight. But apparently Petr Yan wasn't fully healthy. All that gets put to rest now because Merab's gotten to a point where he's defended the title so many times. Petr Yan's going to get another shot at it. Petr Yan has held his own since that loss. He's responded back with wins over Song Yadong, Davison Figueiredo, and Marcus McGee. That's 3 straight wins to put him back in this spot. He's one of the most entertaining bantamweights in the world. One of the most skilled fighters, and just also a super satisfying and appealing style to watch with his striking, spinning elbows, his high kicks. Petr Yan's an absolute savage to watch. But there's no way I think anyone's going to say he's not beating. Merab's just going to do the same thing he's been doing over and over again to every single fighter. He even almost finished in his last fight Sandhagen on the feet. He really almost did. So he's going to go in there. He's going to play around in the beginning and then continue to just be the relentless pressure style that he is and run laps with Petr Yan, probably take into decision, get another title defense, set the record, and just continue to further himself away from Dominic Cruz as the bantamweight GOAT. He's definitely got the best resume, I think, ever in bantamweight history. There's nobody else close that has the resume that Merab has. The bantamweight division is the most skilled it's ever been, and Merab is at the top of it, just continuing to lap title defenses. The only fight that I think in which Merab could be live to lose is the Umar rematch. Really is, the Umar rematch. That's it. But Petr Yan, yeah, that's it. Merab to defend versus Petr Yan. And maybe he does it more. He's probably going to do it more decisively this time than their first fight. So yeah, I thought this was going to be a quicker one, but this still ended out to become around 30 minutes, this breakdown of each fight. But again, I got Pantoja and Merab to defend their titles once again, and a bunch of other really entertaining clashes on this card. It's a very lighter weight class fight card, but a lot of really fun matchups. So we will see, and I'll see you guys after the card.